company that I hold near and dear to my heart is, of course, Sega. I grew up with a Sega Genesis. I thought it was the greatest thing in the entire universe. I thought Sonic the Hedgehog was the coolest thing. And Sega, of course, has gone through many transformations over the years. I've seen Sega at their peak, I've seen Sega at their lowest, and it's been a really interesting ride for Sega, but I think Sega doesn't quite get enough respect in the video game industry because of all the things that they did for video game hardware. When you look at Sega Genesis hardware and beyond, they were real risk takers. They did things that people thought couldn't be done and probably shouldn't have been done. Looking at the Dreamcast and comparing it to modern consoles, you can see how the Dreamcast sort of paved the way for these modern consoles for things like online gaming and stuff. So I really always take my hat off to Sega because I feel like without them in the video game landscape, who knows what the world of video games would look like in the current year. But of course, like I said, Sega has had its ups and downs, and it seems like the fiscal year of 2018 was a downtime for Sega, a really downtime. And their latest financial report shows some pretty big doom and gloom for the company. But Sega themselves have come out and said that they have a plan on how to fix this, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about what their 2018 fiscal year looked like, what they're planning for 2019 and beyond, and how I feel that they can expand upon this and how they can ensure a successful route for Sega so that Sega is a company around for many decades later. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about what's currently going on in the world of Sega.
Hey, RGT85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! So like I said, for Sega's fiscal year 2018 earnings, it was bad. Like, it was very, very bad. The company profits were down 70%, 70%, down to $23.82 million for the fiscal year of 2018. And that's a big, big drop. Now, some of it has to, of course, come from the fact that the Sega Genesis Mini did not release in the fiscal year 2018. Looking at the Sega Genesis Mini, that of course seemed to be being done by AT Games, and after a harsh backlash from many people in the video gaming community who did not want to see AT Games get a hold of this, they of course delayed it, and now it is coming out in 2019. So I feel like that probably hurt a lot more than Sega is leading on. Obviously, something like a plug-and-play system is going to do decent in terms of sales. The PlayStation Classic didn't do all that well, of course, but I feel like that was more of an overstock situation. I feel like Sony thought that the impact of this would be much more plentiful than it was in the video game landscape. But now looking at what you have for 2019 with the Sega Genesis Mini, you already have a much more robust system. You have a great library of games. Of course, we've talked about 20 of the games coming to the system so far. There's still 20 more unannounced. Hopefully I'll be revealing those 20 games on this channel like I did with the last 10. So I think that that really hurt Sega in the long run. The main things that Sega feels hurt their 2018 was market miscalculations, too many games in development, lack of sales performance, and game delays. And Sega even went on record as saying that their plan fell significantly below the initial plan due to deterioration of a business environment and a lack of hit titles. So obviously, you know, Sega came out with some stuff in 2018 and by extension Atlas, and they probably didn't sell all that well. There wasn't really many memorable Sega games in 2018 that I can think of off the top of my head. So because of this, Sega is now looking at different avenues. They're completely adjusting their business plan for the upcoming years, and they're really wanting to refocus on what they are doing. And one of the areas of refocus is going back to their old IPs and really expanding upon these old IPs. IPs like Persona, IPs like the Yakuza, and IPs like, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog, which, you know, we could do without a Sonic the Hedgehog game for a little while, unless it's a really good one like something like Sonic Mania. But I think this is going to be a very interesting time for Sega because Sega, of course, has so many awesome franchises that come to mind when I think of Sega, and many of them are underutilized. Looking at the Yakuza franchise, Yakuza has been pretty much regulated to the PS4 and PC now. Of course, a couple of Yakuza games have come out on the PC as of late, and I think the Yakuza series is great, but limiting it to only being on the PlayStation 4, I feel could potentially hurt sales from this, and that's another area that Sega is looking to expand as well. They're looking to make more multi-platform games, and I think the first series that needs to be a multi-platform series has to be the Yakuza series. There's no reason that you can't have Yakuza games on Microsoft platforms or on the Nintendo Switch as well, because I think the Yakuza games would do really well. Of course, you saw the new Persona Scramble game. That's sort of a Hyrule Warrior style meets Persona game, so they're also looking to expand on their IPs as well, put them out with other companies and let other companies do things with their mainline IPs. Of course, Sega owns Atlas, and I'm not going to talk too much about what's going on with Atlas Atlus because obviously they do a lot of more niche RPG stuff that some of the things just don't really hit with me, but obviously the Persona series is big. Joker is in Smash Brothers. People are very excited for Persona, so to expand the reach of Persona, to expand the reach of Yakuza makes perfect sense to me, and I think it's a smart decision by Sega going forward in the future. Now, of course, when you're talking about Sega IPs, you have to talk about bringing back old IPs. They also alluded to things like bringing back old IPs, doing remasters of old IPs, and even just making new games of old IPs. It seems like they're trying to get away from making new IPs, new franchises, and I think that might be kind of smart for the short term for them. Obviously, Judgment is coming out. A lot of people seem to be excited for Judgment, but beyond that, there hasn't really been a successful new Sega IP in a long time. So by looking at your back catalog of characters and games, of course, you can really sort of expand upon this. Now, what games should they be thinking about bringing back? That's an area I want to talk about as well, because I feel like there are some franchises that make perfect sense in the modern era, and maybe a couple that are just very selfish ones for me personally, that I think would do very well. And more than likely, Sega is watching this video. Hi, Sega. So make sure you guys take these suggestions to heart. First and foremost, Virtua Fighter. What kind of world do I live in where I have not had a new Virtua Fighter game in, what, 8 years? Like, this is absolute insanity. Look, fighting games are very popular right now. Fighting games have always been very popular. Look at the Tekken series. Tekken series is doing good. Street Fighter, doing good. Mortal Kombat, it's blowing up right now. Mortal Kombat 11 is like the hypest thing. If you do a Mortal Kombat related video on YouTube right now, you're gonna get views. I even got great views on my Mortal Kombat Arcade 1-Up thing. Like, people are interested in fighting games, and when I think of awesome fighting games, I think of the Virtua Fighter series. Yeah, maybe the last two entries in the series weren't all that great, but competitive fighting scenes are so big right now, so it seems kind of strange to me that we're not trying to tap into this competitive fighting market. The Virtua Fighter series was always very deep. On the surface, it looked like something that was very simplistic, but once you actually learn the mechanics of the game, it was actually super deep. So I think a new Virtua Fighter makes perfect sense to me. I think it's a real way to tap into the fighting market. You could obviously get this game in competitions like EVO and really just bring people back to the Virtua Fighter universe. Don't worry about the flash and flare. Focus on the actual fighting within the game, and I think you would have a huge hit on your hand. Another series that I want to see Sega go after is probably a series that not a lot of people are going to think of when they think of classic Sega IPs, but it's one that I think of, and that is the Stalker series. Of course, you had Landstalker on the Sega Genesis, and you had Time Stalker on the Dreamcast, and that was it. Look, single player games are very popular right now. There's this whole myth that single player games don't sell well, but we debunked that on a video by showing you guys that single player games do sell well as long as they're good games. You have games like Spider-Man, you have games like God of War, you have games like Uncharted, you have, of course, Super Mario Odyssey, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Resident Evil 7, the Resident Evil 2 remake. And I know what you're saying to yourself, well, RGT, yes, those are single player games, but they're also established IPs. But even non-established IPs are doing pretty well in the single player market. Look at Sekiro. Sekiro is selling exponentially well. You, of course, have the recently released Days Gone that got somewhat mediocre scores, you know, 7s and 8s and stuff like that, which isn't inherently bad, but a lot of gamers are turned off by 7s and 8s, yet the game seems to be selling very well. So the whole notion that single player games don't sell is completely false. And the Stalker series, I think, could be something very interesting for Sega. It was always felt like, to me, it was their answer to the Legend of Zelda series. And I always really enjoyed Time Stalker and Landstalker on the Dreamcast and Sega Genesis, respectively. I think they could really tap into a decent market there. You know, have it, you know, flashbacks to the older games. Maybe those games weren't super popular, but I think they're key franchises. That's a franchise that people would like to see again. And I think Sega could actually be very creative with it as well. And really, Sega has so many franchises that they could tap into with either remasters, reimaginings, or just a new entry in the series. Where's Vector Man? Like, Vector Man, yes, he was a 2D game on the Sega Genesis with 2 entries, and then he just sort of went away. But Vector Man was always about cutting-edge graphics and real interesting combat and interesting platforming mechanics. And I feel like that's a series that they could expand upon. Of course, you have Jet Set Radio, which, once again, is a popular series. Tons of people are looking forward to seeing what's next in this franchise, and they've been waiting for freaking ever. Racing games, you have Daytona USA, you have Virtual Racing. Of course, Virtual Racing just came to the Nintendo Switch via the Sega Ages collection, and it's arguably the best version of Virtual Racing we ever got. But the final franchise I would like to see Sega tap into is going to be something that, you know, maybe it might not sell all that great, okay? I'll be honest, it might not sell all that great, but it's something I want to see. And that is Knights. Give me a new Nights. Why do I have to wait so long for a Nights? Of course, we got Nights into Dreams on the Sega Saturn and Nights Journey into Dreams on the Nintendo Wii, which admittedly was not a bad game. It wasn't a great Nights game. It wasn't, you know, super califragilisticexpialidocious or anything like that. But once you got rid of the motion controls and played with the standard controller, I thought it worked fine. So I would like to see Nights be brought back. Of course, we've seen Nights make cameos in other Sega games, but I feel like Nights just really needs a chance to shine. Nights needs a chance to be given the spotlight once again, because Nights on the Sega Saturn was just such an amazing game to me, and I feel like it sort of lost its vision on the Nintendo Wii with the Wii version of the game, but I think it's a franchise that people would resonate with. I think it's a franchise that you could potentially get kids involved with. Obviously, kids like bright colors and stuff like that, and the colors in those games were always just so bright. And yeah, Sega could play it safe and just go with the same franchises that they always do, because let's be honest, I feel like Sega has alluded to going into their backlog for the past few years now, saying that, oh yeah, we're gonna look at our old IPs and we're gonna bring stuff back. But I feel like now is the time to actually do it. When you have a 70% decrease in your profits year over year, you gotta do something. So now is the time to do it. And I feel like Sega has some positive energy going right now. Things like the Sega Genesis Mini are really bringing people back to a positive mindset with Sega. Things like the Sega Ages Collection, once again, bringing people back to a positive mindset with Sega. I think by expanding these IPs, by putting Yakuza as a multi-platform game, by putting the Persona mainline series as a multi-platform game, by maybe making a new good Sonic game. You had a great game with Sonic Mania. Build upon that, you know, do something with that. And of course, by revisiting key franchises like Virtua Fighter, I think Sega could be in a great position a year or two from now, but they need to follow through with it. Yes, I would love to see new IPs from Sega. I love whatever Sega does because it always seems very interesting to me, but you gotta go where the money is right now. Sega also talked about going into PC stuff, which is fine with me, but I'm not a PC gamer, so I really don't care about it, but I just want to see Sega do well. I want Sega to be a company that is around forever, and I want to see Sega do what they need to do in order to be successful, and I think they're on the right path. They just need to stick with it, and hopefully they'll take some of these mainline franchises, make new entries, make reimaginings, or make remasters of them, and just make everyone happy. So let me know in the comments section down below what you think Sega needs to do. Do you think they can bounce back from this 70% decrease year over year? Do you think that the writing's on the wall for Sega? Or do you think things like visiting their old IPs, things like the Sega Genesis Mini, and potentially future mini systems will eventually help them out? And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Yes, I went with another background for this video. I've done 3 different backgrounds since I've been in my new place. I don't know which one I'm happy with, so let me know which one you like the most. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next vid. Later.